All right, all right. Hola, hola, hola. My name is Jessica Padron, and I am the host today of the Latinos Unidos Spanglish podcast. I'm so excited. We have some awesome guests today, and I would love to introduce them. But really quick, psych, we don't got to wear our masks because I'm encouraging all of you, get vaccinated. Vacúnase, porque el más pronto que te vacunas, el más pronto que todo regresa normal. There is so many sites where you could just walk in these days. There's lots of places serving the East Side specifically. El Shaddai Church over on Lake Mead is one of the locations on the East Side. Please contact me for information or reach out to Latinos Unidos. We also have El Casa del Inmigrante by the Rafael Rivera Center. And several locations all over town. So if you're still hesitant, you're still waiting, stop waiting. Now's the time to get it done, you guys, so we can have normal conversations and get together with our friends. And of course, you want to protect your abuelita, your tia, your cousin, your friend. I just look so forward to hanging out with all of you again once you're vaxxed. So with that being said, I'm very excited to introduce our guest. Let me start with a huge, excited introduction for my friend Fernando Romero from Hispanics in Politics. Fernando, would you like to introduce yourself? Give us a few words.
Buenos dias. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to introduce myself. I wish I had brought my bio so we could put it on the screen, but I've been around for a long time. I've been a Las Vegas resident for 54 years, going on 55. I am a third-generation American of Mexican descent. So born in El Paso, Texas, and here I am in Vegas. Came to Nevada Southern University back when, in 67. And as you know, Nevada Southern University is now UNLV, where I started, by the way, in 69, what is now the oldest Latino organization in the state of Nevada, which is the Student Organization of Latinos. Why? Because I looked around and there were not many of this looking guy, with the brown skin and the last name. So I started the organization back then to recruit Latino students from the few high schools that were here at the time. And when I graduated in 1970, there were 450 grads. Out of that, only 8 had Latino surnames, and I was one of them. Again, which is why I originally started the Student Organization of Latinos. And ever since, I've been involved with the community and doing a lot of projects. I've worked for a couple of governors, Governor O'Callaghan, Governor Miller. Mm-hmm. I was the first Latino to sit on the governor's cabinet back when, and I was also the first Latino to have the position of the state's Equal Employment Opportunity Officer. I was also the director of the Nevada NESD, Nevada Equal Rights Commission, and worked for a U.S. Senator as well, Richard Bryan. And again, being involved with the community. I'm not a founding member of Hispanics in Politics. I was there from the very start. It's a 40-year organization, the oldest Latino political organization in the state, and we were founded by as the political arm of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. And back in 1995, we broke off. The chamber went one way, and we went the other, and that's 26 years of doing breakfasts on the first Wednesday of every single month. And we've had since hundreds of guests as far as addressing our organization.
Hundreds. And now you got desayunos digitales, right?
Well, once in a while, because of the COVID. But the last 2 meetings have been in person. Last month, we had the honor of having the first Latina U.S. Senator in the history of our country. Catherine Cortez Masto was our guest. As was Susie Lee, a congresswoman from District 3. And this month we had Consul de Mexico. His name is Julian Ascutia Rodriguez, who was there. And by the way, I love this guy because he's the only person that we've ever had in those 26 years who stuck around. The meeting was over. He sat there and answered questions from people just walking up to him, taking photos and everything else.
Not the typical political, I got my couple photos, said my sound bites, I'm
And
out,
bye.
peace out,
Yeah.
bye.
Well, and I don't blame them. They do have a schedule and things to
Yeah.
do. So does he, but he decided to stay there and just talk to people on a one-to-one basis and take photos and everything else. So he really has my total respect. I really like that guy. And by the way, he was appointed Consul of Mexico in September of 2020. And when he came, he noticed that of all the people taking the vaccines, only 10% were Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
So he jumped in there with the mayor, Councilwoman Olivia Diaz, and went out and really passed the word along that Latinos needed to be vaccinated. And he took one more step further. He opened up his office, the Consulate of Mexico, opened up to do the vaccines.
So yet another place, mi gente, vacúnate por favor, because
That's right.
I know our community and the Black community especially, there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And this show is no bullshit, I'm no bullshit. So I know there's a reason. There's a lot of history in this country of experiments, issues, discrimination, medical discrimination against communities of color. But let me tell you this, folks. The sooner you get vaccinated, the sooner we get back to normal. And if you really look at the death rates, the communities that are affected, especially Latinos, because we are in those service industries, we are getting obliterated by this disease. So don't wait anymore. The folks that are getting it, if you're so worried about what's in the vaccine, be more worried about birth control. There's more defects on that. And we see the communities that are doing it are mostly affluent white communities working. We are stalling now, and this is the time when we need to be in hyperdrive. So please, vacunate. But Fernando, I look forward to talking more about this. I am so excited because there's so much history we can cover with everything you've done in the community. You didn't even mention National Council of La Raza because you were with them for a little bit too.
I was there for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was also appointed back when with Richard Nixon appointed me to the Civil Rights Commission. So that's how old I am, and that's how long I've been around. What can I tell you?
Hey, it's okay. Oldie but goodie. And that's why this episode is La Vieja y la Nueva Escuela, old school and new school. And now we're going to get to the new school. I am very, very excited, you all. Voy a introducir a mi nuevo interno, my very new intern that's about to start with Latinos Unidos, Alex Guerrero. Alex, it's great to have you on today. Please say hi to the gente.
Hi, thank you for having me. Well, I can't really compete with that. He has a lot of experience. But I'm really excited to have this opportunity, be able to get more involved with the community and learn more about, Latinos Unidos, being unidos con la comunidad.
Yeah. And, Alex, there is so much, obviously, we're both working to get Fernando's level of experience here. I've been doing this since I was 14 years old. So I've been in the game quite a long time. And once you're a community organizer, you're always a community organizer. But the reason I took you on is because, I wasn't the one who said this, folks. Le introducí a un amigo mío, que es un líder nacional de una organización que habla con los latinos, los saca a votar, y introducí a Alex. Y él dijo, mira, yo veo que este muchacho es muy humilde, que es trabajador, que quiere involucrarse y a mejorar su comunidad, pero ¿sabes qué? Necesita un poco más experiencia. He needs a little bit more work there. And I was like, well, guess what? We're going to bring him on here. So, Alex, we've talked a few times, and I'm really excited. I think you have a great spirit. And you're going to do wonderful things here in our community. But I wanted to bring you on the show to introduce you and learn a little bit more about you. I want our folks to know who are some of the folks that make Latinos Unidos run. We got great members that do wonderful things in the community. Tell us more a little bit about what you're interested in and why you want to get involved.
So most of it has to do with what you were explaining earlier, how that intersectionality with the COVID vaccine experimentations on Black and Latino communities. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really interested in this organization, is being able to learn more about my people, but also, uniting us as a whole community sticking together and then being able to overcome situations like the COVID or the pandemic, and then being able to, you know, come up with solutions so that we can all get through it together as a community.
So addressing disparities and some of those issues. And of course, history is important to addressing a lot of those issues. And a lot of our gente, you know, everybody's just so focused on trying to survive. It's really hard to get people to see the larger picture sometimes. And we got to be understanding of that. So I'm very excited to have you on, Alex. Since this is at the beginning of your journey, can you tell the folks maybe what is one of your goals to get out of this internship, and what's something you want to get out of this internship, and what you would like to see yourself doing, or what you'd like to see in 6 months after interning with Latinos Unidos?
To be honest, I haven't really thought about that. I'm really motivated to just like start this experience, being able to just figure it out as we go. But of course, one of the things that I really hope that I'm able to do is make a change in the community, be able to leave a mark, and, you know, not just stand around anymore, but make a difference.
Yay, I'm excited. And it'll be great to have your perspective because, you know, I was always the youngest person in the room when I got started. And now I'm not the youngest person in the room. I have to be like, your generation. Tell us more. So I'm really excited about that. So, Fernando, you mentioned a lot of the vast things you've done in your history. And I wanted to bring you on because on my very first campaign, that's how I met you. And, you know, I wanted to introduce Alex to you as well because when I got started, I joined the Bill Richardson campaign office, which was right across from my house next to Eddie Escobedo Plaza, where El Mundo offices are. And I walk in. You know, I'm a very energized little high schooler, and I have no clue what to do, but I'm like, I got to do something. And you were one of the folks that, you know, sat down, gave me some advice, and I got to work with some great organizers to get started. So I'd like your perspective. What is something we could do to make politics more welcoming to young folks? And how can we, you know, get more of them involved? Because I feel like so many folks like Alex are frustrated. And they're ready to do something, you know, or in some cases, they're just completely apathetic because they feel disenfranchised from both sides of the aisle. So do you have any thoughts as to how we could get more folks like Alex involved, not just motivated, not just tweeting something, but in those offices doing something, in our community doing something, at your breakfast doing something?
Well, I think one of the things is to really get involved is to, for us older people, if you will, I don't want to include you in my age group, obviously, but we need to have more activities for the younger person. The fact of the matter is that we don't, and when we do, we have basically the newer generation that has started that kind of eats the spotlight, and they don't pass on too many goodies, if you will, too much information to the younger people, too much. They don't energize, if you will, the younger folk. And the younger folk get turned off right away. It's a new world. I mean, look at us. We're podcasting. We've got this. We've got that. When I was starting out, we didn't have anything. Mm-hmm. There was no newspapers. I had the pleasure of starting or being one of the first persons to start Spanish radio aquí in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. That was back in, when I started, it was 1974. I don't want to say I was the first because there were the Reyes brothers that started first, a gentleman by the name of Fred Flores who was there as well. But we were there from the very start. And by that, I mean, nada, no newspapers, not even flyers in Spanish. And, you know, what some of us did was to push activities that were going on in the community to bring the younger people, you know, back in, or in, I should say. And we're just basically not doing that. We really are not doing that.
Yeah. And, you know, I feel like when we do a lot of these things, if anything, some of the events that we see from campaigns, from organizations to energize the Latino community, if anything, and we kind of addressed this in the last episode, mariachi politics, right? If anything, I feel like some of these events serve to reinforce stereotypes and stuff. And they're very superficial. And that kind of, these folks, they read through bullshit. They can tell. They're like, oh, you say this and you're doing this. I'm not about that life. Get out of my face, right? So, Alex, what's one way, some of the events and things that Latinos Unidos has done is source directly from the community and bring together activists, artists, all that. And we've had a lot of success at our events pre-COVID. What's something you would like to see? Like if HIP was to do an event or the Chamber of Commerce or Latinos Unidos or even a campaign. Like let's say my good friend Susie Lee. I helped her with Latinx for Susie Lee in one of her campaigns because I think she's awesome. What would entice you and your friends? Like thinking of your friends at school to come to these events. What's the type of things they want to see? Or maybe what are some of the things that turn them off?
For sure, one of the things that would turn them off is if you tell them what to believe, because I feel like that's something that's really prominent in my generation, is that in this day and age of like social media, everyone is able to just express themselves freely. So one of the things that I wouldn't advise doing is just, trying to force them to believe something. As I was saying, with social media, it's just allowed us to communicate with one another and then also be able to fully like delve into our identities. Or especially for me, I guess, it helped me a lot to be able to, be connected with everyone in my school and even in other schools, to be able to talk directly to them, learn about like one another, to be able to make up our own identities. So I think that's one thing that would just really, like, as you said, put them off a little. But one thing that I would recommend trying out to, help them, attract them more, would be just tied into what I just said, just let them be open about what they want, as long as you give them some space to be able to create their own connections and then be able to, connect with the organization, with their own experiences. And I feel like that's something that would really help.
So maybe more open forums, less patronization, less talking down to folks, right? If I'm hearing you correctly, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of folks, you brought up social media as a big concern with them. Can you tell me a little bit more, how does your generation feel we can best support you? What are some of the things we can do to offer those resources to you? What are folks your age looking for?
Well, tying into the social media aspect of it, it would really help if, I would say if it were like readily available, but at the same time, you also have to be open to the social media. So I would say that the most effective way would probably be like, to have mentors, people who are willing to go out and help them. Like you, I'm really thankful for like everything that you've helped me, because I didn't even know about Latinos Unidos more than a month ago. And now I'm like sitting here in this podcast, and I'm really encouraged to start working with the organization to make a difference. So I think that's definitely something that would make a change, is being able to have someone who supports you, but also doesn't tell you what to do.
So more mentorship, smaller connections people are craving, rather than just these bland messages on Facebook like, we care, all the corporate Black Lives Matter, and then they're like divesting from communities and stuff like that, you know? Okay, that makes sense. So, Fernando, I wanted to take it back to you because I feel like an issue that we have in the Latino community is, locally here in Nevada, we're pretty fortunate. Our legislators and folks are pretty accessible. There's organizations around to do things. We can always be doing more. And I think in the Latino community in particular, of all the communities of color, we still don't have a collective unified voice. We still need to work together on issues outside of immigration. But I want to bring it nationally, since you have so much experience. Do you feel that bipartisanship is still alive? Like what can What can Latinos, what's a Latino's place in the Republican Party, and what can Latinos demand of the Democratic Party so that we find an improved state of engagement there? Because there's some serious issues.
That is one hell of a situation.
Yeah.
Let me say that Hispanics in politics has always been nonpartisan. We have prided ourselves in that. The board, the makeup of the organization in and of itself, the people we invite to our breakfasts and to the special events that we have every now and then, we do it on the basis of who they are and what they represent, not what party do they represent. Needless to say, and I won't go deeply into it, but the last 4 years have been very taxing on that nonpartisanship aspect. We have seen a tremendous division now between Republicans and Democrats. Although, even with Susie Lee and Catherine Cortez Masto being our principal speakers last month, we had 17 Republicans in the audience. And by the way, we were limited to 50. So, 15 were Republicans. And it was a very smoothly run program. The thing is that both parties are now within themselves are divided. The Republicans, I don't need to tell you what they're doing to Liz Cheney of Wyoming and other Republicans, the Mitt Romney, for example, in Utah, right, where he, by the skin of his teeth, he was almost ousted, sanctioned. The problem is that within our own parties we have really deep philosophies that perhaps sometimes don't concur with one another. What I notice about the Democrats, for example, is that you have a set of Democrats who want your Latino support, but you still look at the Democratic Party and how many Latinos are in high-ranking positions of the Democratic Party. Of course, the same can be said about the Republican Party. The one thing that we know is that the Democrats do more for the people whom we identify with. The Republicans do not. The Republicans do use, for the most part, the Latinos that they have to basically be a voice for the Republicans, for the party, and for certain politicians, but not for themselves, not for the community.
That kind of reminds me of what's going on with Caitlyn Jenner right now in California, right? I feel like, to put it simply, unfortunately, since there's no deep conversations, really, both parties have their issues, correct? But I feel like what I've seen quite a bit right now in this age of outrage for everything, and, some people say PC culture, and some people say this and that, and just everybody so divided, like you said, within ourselves. You got some conservatives over here that are literally fascists that don't want people to vote, they want, basically either a theocracy or to worship Trump gold statues. And then on the left, you got folks who want to be the beacon of morality. You can't say or do anything without, they're so focused on identity politics to our own detriment in a way. So it kind of reminds me with the Caitlyn Jenner thing, at least on the conservative side. I feel like there's folks like Candace, whatever her name is, in the Black community.
Candace Owens.
There we go. There's nothing conservatives love more than a marginalized person, like a Black person, Latino, that talks bad about their own people that fits into their narrative, right? So, there's plenty of those, like, Hispanic conservative women, well, if they want to come here legally, and I'm like, okay, but that doesn't include the fact that people are refugees. They're in cages right now, literally. Are you advocating for that? Are you okay with that? And they just kind of sidestep that whole, I feel like Republicans, because they view so many things like a business, right? They're kind of like, look, let's make an investment in this person. Let's give them a platform. Let's give them a sponsorship. Let's give them money, whatever they want, so that they could spew out what we want them to spew out if they're willing to sell themselves out like that. Democrats, they kind of convince you this is for your own good, this is that. They let you say your thing. They kind of superficially support it, but then there's no foundation there. There's no resources. There's nothing feeding into that. There's some serious issues with the talking heads from both parties, right? Do you feel there's anything we could do to address that, to have more authentic speakers, you know, because you can't have someone like Caitlyn Jenner, who's a transgender woman, actively supporting, you know, bills of hate against her own community. That doesn't, how does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't. Not with Jenner.
Or Ted Cruz even.
Jenner is a totally different, far and apart from either party. She really is. She's jumped onto the Republican Party because the Republican Party right now is seeking, as you were alluding to a while ago with Candace Owens, for example, and Tim Scott, you know, hey, I was never discriminated against. Give me a break, you know.
And then he says, yes, but I was followed in grocery stores and pulled over for no reason. But America's not racist.
Right. And see, and what's happening with the Republicans, they're getting those people, and then they basically give them these talking points that say that, you know, I am not black when I am, you know, that kind of thing.
We don't see color, so let's not acknowledge it.
And the Democrats should take advantage of the situation right now, but they do not do that. They put us all in the same, you need housing, you need this, that, and the other, but yet, as far as the true leadership roles, they're very hard to come by. When you look at a legislature, for example, with 42 assembly members, or members of the assembly, how many are Latino in a community, in a state where 35% of the population is Latino? We're not 35% of the assembly, that I can tell you. We're not even close to that as far as the Senate is concerned. And then what happens is that, oh, you want to run in that area, Ward 11, okay, we'll Ward 28, we'll do that. We'll support you. However, don't you dare run over here in District 41.
They peg you into a little box, and that's what you got to do because you're the Latino, so you need to run here. You can only talk about immigration and this. Like, forget about the top 5 issues that Latinos voted on in 2020. We're just going to peg you into that, right?
And both parties are, in essence, the same way. A few years ago, I'll mention her name because what I'm about to say is true. T.B. Ellis, who is Venezuelan. I think TB now lives in Spain. I'm not sure. But anyway, TB was a really strong Republican, very powerful. I shouldn't say powerful. She held a position as, I think she was secretary of the party, very strong Republican. She ran for, and I cannot remember the assembly district that she ran for. The party in and of itself went and selected or found a male opponent within the primary to oppose T.B. Ellis. T.B. lost in the primary. Right. You know, she would say what they wanted her to say, but when it came down time to support her, they did not.
Right.
But again, Democrats are not that far from that as well. You know, we look at that. If you live in a certain area, you should run, and we'll support you. If you don't, you know, basically don't think about it. And so it's very difficult. Among ourselves, we need to be a little stronger, a little more united, which we really are not. We as Latinos, it's very difficult to really put our point across when so many things are happening, and so many individuals are wanting to be, you know, the
everybody wants to be the gran mierda, and no one wants to do the work behind it.
The old song, "Everybody's a star." You know, so it's one of those things. It's very difficult. It's not an easy thing to conquer.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like things are a little better. I'm always giving shout outs to my hermana Cecia from Mi Familia Vota. She's a badass. She's doing some good work. Edgar Flores, one of our representantes, I think that's an issue too, right? You know, the party is all about supporting Latino. I feel like he single-handedly was in charge of a lot of the Latino outreach in 2020 because there wasn't the resources, the language materials and all that. He just kind of ended up doing his own things through the caucus. And then, you know, we have some folks each doing their own thing. I try to support anyone I can, you know, so that we're collectively moving together. We just had May Day protest, right? And Latinos Unidos was there with Eri Ramos, Mi Familia Vota, a bunch of folks coming together. So I think we're getting a little better. Alex, that kind of brings me to you, and I wanted to ask you, what can we do, you know, for the young folks who see some of the tokenization happening, for the young folks who see, you know, both parties, it kind of scares me because some of them are so turned off. They're like, well, they both suck. I don't trust either of them. And it scares me because, yes, the Democrats have a lot of issues. Our country has a lot of issues, but that doesn't mean I'm not patriotic. That's why I'm working on them, because I love this country so much, right? That doesn't mean I'm not a proud Democrat because I call out the issues with the Democratic Party that I think are serious and need to be fixed in order for us to be successful. So with your friends and stuff, I feel like there might be a lot of this false equivalency. Well, the Democrats suck, they're weak, I can't trust them. But then the Republicans, yeah, they're not that great either. I'm like, well, literally, they're trying to prevent people from voting. They are trying, in Arizona, they're literally still trying to turn over our election. We still haven't prosecuted. Like, we're in a really scary place as a country. Those are our democratic foundations. And with gerrymandering going on, you know, if people don't like it, they can vote them out. Literally, they're stripping away the voting power of black and brown people everywhere. It's very scary. So how do you feel we can address that with folks your age who are like, well, I don't trust either, I don't want to get involved? How do you give them that sense of urgency? Is there any conversations you've had with your friends, or maybe any tips for things that you feel we should highlight?
To be honest, for methods to be able to counter that influence, I'm not sure what we could do, but I did want to add on to what you were saying, because there's definitely a lot of criticism with both the Republicans and the Democrats today. Myself, I mean, I consider myself a Democrat, but, you know, I'm also wary of the faults that the Democrats have, and then, like, you know, what's going on. But I feel like the consensus of the people in my age group, they focus too much on the bad parts of each party, and that just makes them not want to participate, because then they're like, well, yeah, the Democrats, you know, they're all about morals and whatnot, but they did this, so I don't want to be a part of that. But then Republicans, they're doing this, so I don't want to be a part of that either. So they just seclude themselves from the political situations.
I think that's a strong point. And I mean, it's not just your generation. I feel like people blame the young people for everything when it comes to a lot of it. First it was the millennials, and now people are realizing not everybody's a millennial anymore. And they're like, it's the Gen Zers. But honestly, if we look at trends in nonpartisan voter registration, that's been going on for quite some time now. It's really Gen X that was like, well, we're going to kind of buck the system a little bit. And that's why there's been so many calls for ranked choice voting, and for, you know, hopefully one day, and, you know, with the foundation of how everything's set up, getting rid of the electoral college or having a multi-party system. There's like three main things going out there, and there's no clear path to any right now, with the exception of ranked choice voting, which has been making some gains around the country. Alex, do you feel... what are three issues that you feel would motivate and energize folks your age the most? Because, you know, we've seen lots of movements in the last few years where the young people are the ones at the front. Like, they're not even following millennials. They're like, get the hell out of my way. You guys screwed everything up, you boomers. We're here to not take your crap anymore. What energizes you guys the most? What are like three issues that you feel we can focus on to get you guys out there?
Definitely racism. That's one thing that's just been, I feel, driving my generation. When I was in high school, I went to ATech, and there was this one day where it was about gun violence, but you know how black and brown populations, they're disproportionately affected by gun violence. So on this specific day, all of the, well, not all the seniors, but most of the seniors and then some of the other classes, they went out to the front of the school and they started a protest, just a peaceful protest. But, you know, it was really, really sorrowful to see that the teachers and the administrations, like, they were just discouraging it, not letting us, like, be able to say, like, look, we're scared right now. Like, we're in this situation where we're in high school and there's a bunch of gun violence happening in schools. Like, we don't want that to be us, especially when there's kids that are like coming to school and then making jokes about that. It just makes us feel like we're in danger. So I guess that's another one, you know, gun violence, and also racism. especially with Black Lives Matter. I wasn't able to attend any of the protests that happened, but, you know, of all the people that went out there and were able to do that, like, that's something that's really inspirational to me. Happy that they were able to go and do that. For sure, I would have gone, but, you know, my mom, she's like, no, tú no vas a salir, está muy peligroso. So
Latino parents are so protective. Yeah. So yeah, you know, seeing how people come down disproportionately, unequitably on communities of color, right? Even with police brutality, like you touched on, right? We see de-escalation tactics when there's someone doing a mass shooting, and let's take them to Burger King, or the kid had a bad day. And then you see folks like, don't shoot, I'm fine. Or here's my gun permit, it's right there in my pocket, you know, Philandio Castillo, all these names, sleeping in their bed, no knock warrants, and then boom, they're dead. So people can de-escalate when they want to, but apparently there's no equitability there. And I think that's very frustrating. You know, we teach the kids, right? Freedom, equality, justice for all. And then when they see there's no freedom, equality, justice for all, and they want to fix it, we're over here trying to punch them down. So what would you say is another issue that kind of has you guys fired up?
Now that I think about it, I guess like gender, sexuality, things like that. Those two topics, I mean, they're really something that we're just trying to figure out right now. Something that I notice a lot on social media. People want to be expressive of, like, you know, who they are. So that's definitely another topic that we're really passionate about right now, is being able to fully express ourselves for who we are. Like, no matter who we like, you know, love is basically what we're trying to promote.
In a place full of chaos and hate. So I can
Exactly,
see the frustration. So, okay, well, that makes sense. You know, I feel like Gen Z is kind of the new hippies, because I've always been down with the old school. My mom raised me on soft rock, and she talked about her hippie days. And, you know, I'm listening. And now I hear people listening to Fleetwood Mac. And I hear kids, I'm like, what do you know about Bootsy Collins? What do you know about this? And they're starting to vibe with it. I'm excited for them.
Yeah, and a while ago you said something about the boomers, and I take offense to that. let me just tell you that we as boomers did start everything on the right foot, and it lost momentum, and it lost identity, and it lost so many things along the way. You know, and probably social media and that kind of distorted the picture. But when I can tell you of the heroes that I had back then. They really united us. Jorge Gonzalez from Colorado, Bert Corona from California, Angel Gutierrez from Texas, Reyes Lopez Tijerina from New Mexico. These were people who united the Latinos at that time. And we were formed as one. We even had the La Raza Party back in 1970s. You know, and the thing is that we basically allowed ourselves to be diluted in far as numbers and in strength. And what happened is that we then started looking at other generations, the X and whatever other letter that you want to come up with.
XYZ.
You know, and it's one of those things where at one point we had people who looked out for everybody. And now it's one of those things where many people are looking out for themselves. Might be one of the reasons. In fact, we're that close from the nonpartisans being the second largest political party, you know, if you want to call it that, overtaking the Republicans. Republicans are becoming so aggressive, so negative, so hateful that they are discouraging people who are Republicans who do not feel the same way, who do not have the same hatred, who are not Karens, if you will. You know, and so many of those individuals are quiet. We're paying attention to the Marjorie Taylors of the world. We're paying attention to the Gets of the world, to people who are so they're so focused on destroying the fact that this country is no longer white majority.
So what do we do? You know, we are a multiracial democracy, whether these people want it or not, right? And I see with you, you know, I've been doing this for a while. You're new to the game, but I've been doing this for a while. And when I got started, for many years, I would say really until about 2012 is when we saw the propaganda machine at Fox start to go into hyperdrive and things, you know, after Obama's, you know, second election. So I want to ask you, I feel like we're at a point now where we can't. I used to have so many Republican colleagues I would kick it with and be like, look, you know, we talk shit to each other, but we respected each other. Now it's like some of these talking points, some of these policies don't even, you know, want us to exist. Like literally, how come we can't be friends? And it's like, well, because literally you want people to be in cages, or you want people to, you know, you're literally saying you want an ethnic
and
cleansing.
we're allowing it to happen. We're allowing it right now. Right now, we have a superintendent of schools who is destroying the Latino community, and we're allowing it to happen. And we went out there and recruited a Latino person to take over a racist who had been in charge of some of the Victory and Zoom schools and minority schools. Okay, so we got rid of this guy. We have an individual who comes in, a younger person, younger lady, who has objectives that belong to herself, not to the community. And we allowed her to join in with a Latino superintendent to gradually dilute any strength and any knowledge that our kids should be having. They are destroying, in my opinion, the education of our kids. They are they totally bypass 22,000 minimum, 22,000 Latino students from getting the Chromebooks, from getting any kind of education, the hot-wired, hotspots, you know, and nobody cared. We didn't do anything about it. And when we try to do something about it, other Latinos don't buy into it, don't believe it.
So can you explain that a little more? Because I think a lot of people, you know, because of the pandemic and all the chaos that was going on,
Well, they're using that as an excuse.
Of course.
The pandemic.
Of
You know,
course.
and you talk to the superintendent and you say, we have this particular problem in the schools with ELL students or ESL students. What do you, well, he always comes up with this, we're looking into it. You know, 5 years ago, we the Latino community, the school board of education, not the school board, the Clark County School Trustees, the administration, we supported the master plan for ELL. Supported it. Where's the money? The guy that was brought in from Tucson, Arizona to handle it, his position has been diluted. His people that he has hired have been terminated. You know, and we're allowing it to happen because why? Oh, the Latino superintendent can't be all that bad. Well, he is. He's the Latina trustee, Irene Cepeda, who you put in there to help out the people in the barrio, she hasn't even visited a school, you know, at all. In the barrio, puros Chicanos, puros Latinos, you know, African Americans in all these schools, she has not even visited them. And then when I confronted her, it's the pandemic. Well, wait a minute. You've been there a hell of a lot longer than 1 year. That's not the pandemic. It's your lack of interest for our community. And we're allowing it to happen.
So how can we hold local officials more accountable, and for those who represent our community?
First of all, we have to realize that education is the foremost of anything. I don't care what. You know, in my opinion, the highest profession that we have in this world is the teaching profession. I respect the teachers so much. You know, they're the ones that develop doctors and lawyers and engineers and everything. They are the originators of those minds, you know, and yet we're not paying attention to them. And their own representatives are aligning themselves with people who are destroying that effort. And we are allowing it to happen. We are not paying that much attention to education. And so as a result, you know, we are becoming more and more, unfortunately, in my opinion, less educated. Let me put it this way.
Like a big gap.
Nicer terms, yeah.
Right.
And you know, it's one of those things where we have to unite in that effort. If there's one effort that we should be uniting in, aside from fighting the COVID, which I agree with you wholeheartedly, then it's education. education is where we all started. Education is where I started with the student organization of Latinos to bring people in. I'm not saying that it was because of that, but I'm proud to say that I started it, or I'm one of the, and now we have, for example, UNLV, going back to 1970 when I was one of 8 graduates of 450 with Latinos. Now UNLV is recognized as a Hispanic
serving institution.
And the community college as well. Why? Because there were people who cared, and now it's diluting. We're diluting ourselves.
I think there's a lot of division in education right now, like without getting into the CCEA and SEA stuff as well. I think, following your call, because it has broken my heart to see my sobrino, he's special needs, how much he's struggled this year. And even my niece, yes, you do. Yes, you do. So you understand the story. It was really hard for me to see that, and my niece too. I mean, she's not special needs, but even all these folks, for some kids, it works fantastic and it's easier for them and it's great. Being able to have that flexibility. But for a lot of working class kids, we don't see that, or hasta tienen pena. They don't want to turn on their cameras. They don't want no one to see where they live, what their house looks like, stuff like that. There's a lot of issues going on with that. So maybe, Fernando, we should catch up after this episode and plan an education forum or event that we can do with some of our colleagues across the Latino community, because we need to talk about more than just immigration. That's the reason I started this organization, because I was pissed off and tired of people saying it's Hispanic Heritage Month or this and that. Candidate X is coming to Tacos El Gordo. We'd love to have you and your members show up. And I'm like, that's great, but are we going to talk about anything? It seems like the only thing they want to talk to us about is immigration, and issues critical like education are falling by the wayside.
Well, some of us are getting together and forming a town hall meeting this coming, what is it? I think it's Tuesday, May 12th.
May 12th.
May 12th. And it'll be relevant to the Global High School. There's a long story behind Global High School that was started for individuals coming in from other countries who know no English or very little English, and they're put into Global High School, which is great. The problem is that money follows a student, and some of those principals who know nothing about ELL, nothing about ESL, don't want to lose Pepito Perez to Global High School because Pepito Perez means $3,000, $4,000 to their budget, and the school district doesn't want to give Global High School transportation as they would the magnet schools for a lot of the elitists. They don't give us they don't give Global High School transportation.
I look forward to hearing more about that. Unfortunately, our episode's going to premiere after that event, but I really think we need to work on that. And, having kids feel safe, like you brought up, Alex, in school. Ustedes no se sienten seguros, hay miedo. When there's all these other factors that you got to think about, I don't have that iPad like my friend does. I have this Chromebook. We don't have fast internet. We don't have this. We don't have X. We don't have YZ. What, for folks your age, Alex, for students in high school who are getting ready to go to college, I mean, I feel like we've touched on a lot of negative things this episode, unfortunately, but I feel like it's important to have those building blocks so that we can move up. What can, if there's any issues or events coming up or things that would affect you guys or impact you guys the most, what would you say would be? What, besides the issues of interest you mentioned earlier, what's something that you feel impacts the lives of you and your peers the most?
When you ask that question, do you mean like political issues or just like any
in
issues
general? I mean, because politics ties into everything, right?
Yeah.
Your ability, where you live, your landlord's political. Where you buy your stuff, where you spend your money, that's political. Your access to education, your access to resources, your access to job opportunities, that's all political, homie. It's all political. The ability to express yourself without being reprimanded by the law, or there's still all these horrible things on the books. Fortunately, in Nevada, we've made several changes, we've made progress, but there's still a lot more we can do. So for someone your age, for someone to feel ready to get included or something to fight for, or something to feel encouraged by, what do you feel we can do to impact your life as a community?
Well, one of the things, like, I can sit here all day and just listen to you two, like, go on, and that helps me out a lot, because I'm just sitting here, like, learning about all these like wonderful experiences and that are like just really enriching to learn about, because obviously I wasn't around at that time, so learning about that helps me learn, okay, so this has been done, what can I do to further those goals, or what can I do to advance what like Francisco has done here? What can I do? Fernando. I'm really sorry.
No problem.
What can I do to, just advance the goals that you have started? You were the foundation for that. So what can I do to better like advance those goals to not only impact the current generations, but also to be able to sustain those effects, to be able to reach out to all generations?
I think it's been done. My son, by the way, goes to ECTA, East Career Technical Center. ECTA, I didn't realize, has over 80% Latinos as far as the student body, yet is the number one, well, as of 2 years ago, it was the number one magnet school in the country, with the number one Latina principal magnet, in the country. She's now at Rancho, by the way, Rancho High School. But they have a very strong student organization of Latino, and they're helping each other out, which is what has to happen now.
Like collective resources.
Well, what happens is that now we don't form this organization. We don't participate in these organizations. And when you don't, then you're basically just walking astray, And you help each other out when you form these groups. Why did you form Latinos United? If not to discuss the issues of Latinos. Why do we have Hispanics in politics if not to discuss the issues of Latinos and our laws pertain to us and support certain laws and oppose others? Because we need to discuss among ourselves what the issues are of importance and what we have to do to approach them. You will have people with different points of view,
right?
But they're few and far between.
Rather than screaming at each other when we disagree, we call people in, and we got to have those teachable moments and work together. So I think that's a good point. Alex, does your school have a SOL or have an HSU or anything like that? And is it very active right now?
To be honest, I really haven't looked into that. Right now I'm going to UNLV, so I haven't really had a chance to look into that. But we do have
Mecha.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Hey. I didn't know if it was Mecha or Mecca, but Mecha. We have Mecha. I wanted to get involved with that when I first started there, and I'm looking forward to doing it this upcoming semester, if not this spring semester, just to be able to get a feel of what that is, and also because I feel like that would also really help me out at Latinos Unidos, because just like the interconnectedness of it, I'll be able to gain experiences from both.
Because one hand feeds the other, right? Hispanos en política es importante. Latinos Unidos es importante. Mi familia vota es importante. Tenemos que trabajar juntos, that collective, like you were talking about. So I think part of your internship, Alex, is going to be building some of these community groups up with the younger folks. Because, I connect with folks too, but there's some things you can do that I can never do. There's some folks you could reach that I can never reach. And it's important for all of us to build those collective skills. Something I've thought of in the past that I'd really like to see, antes que terminamos, I'd really like to bring up recently the DNC made an announcement that Nevada is going to be one of the, I believe, top 5 states they're going to make major investments in starting early. And one of the things we've brought up many times in the Latino activist community is how we get resources last. Oh, we care, we're going to do outreach. And then it isn't until like September we get language materials in Spanish or have more events and a real effort done to engage our folks, right? I think what we need to do is have a job bank so that we could see more Latinos in these senior level decision-making roles rather than just as community organizers, which is an important role as well. But we need to see more Latinos moving up and being able to pull others up. And I think we need to have some of those collective resources and information available. So, Fernando, I'm going to call upon you. I'm going to call upon a couple other community leaders, and I'd like to soon start up perhaps more of an organized mentorship effort, because I mentor people every electoral cycle and all the time in between too. I was very fortunate to meet this young man through my friend Jose Torres at LCB. Thank you. But I think we need to work together, because there's only so much I can do, only so much you can do. And we're going to get there. There's some hope. There's some hope. If there would be one thing of hope, or one thing you're looking forward to, or one thing we could grow into, Fernando, what would it be as a community?
I think you just mentioned it. It's the hope, unity. You know, it's funny because as you're talking, I'm thinking that the logo for the Latin Chamber of Commerce, when HIP was still a part of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, was in strength. In unity, there is strength. That used to be on the membrete, on the letterhead. They took it out.
I might take that.
You know, they took it out.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't want unity. We need unity, because in unity there is strength. You know, Alex said at UNLV, you with Latinos United and me with Hispanics in Politics, we have three different mindsets with three different age groups that we can get together and go and help and people out that are in need for certain things that are important to all three of us.
Right.
Again, that's why I say I focus on education. It's so important. Yet, who's paying attention to education? You know, we're allowing things to happen, and you know, we're not paying attention to it.
Right.
You know, and that's where we have to start, because that's where our kids start. That's where I'm very happy to say that Student Organization of Latinos wound up. When we started at UNLV, we're no longer at UNLV. UNLV, the younger members, if you will, students, started getting involved with Greek fraternities. And that's where we lost out as far as Student Organization of Latinos, because the young ladies started with their sororities, the young men started with their fraternities.
Right.
The problem is that then they become opponents of one another, and not necessarily, you know, combined and unified in the same effort.
Yeah, we're all brothers and sisters, where you're Mexicano, Cubano, Venezolano, de todos, and we need to work better on that. I think you got a point.
We have to do that. And again, the Latino, Latinx unites. It doesn't say Mexicans.
Right,
Hispanics
exactly.
in Politics doesn't say Cuban. You know, these say Hispanics in Politics. And we should all unite behind the concept of Hispanics in Politics.
So I'm going to end with that note then. I want everyone to know we're going to get in communication, work more on forming some of these things, because I really want to get it done. There's been small projects here and there through the years, pero nunca juntos for a long period. Nunca más de uno, dos, tres grupos. We need to all come together. I'm talking about National Conservation Leagues, Chispa. I'm talking about everything. So we're going to work on that. But I'm going to let everybody know, by the time this episode premieres, there's going to be a Google form for sign up, an interest form. Si quieres ser involucrado, si quieres ser parte del movimiento, sign the form, fill it out, and we will contact you. Whether that be you want to get involved in a job bag, mentorship, what have you, sign it. Join the community and let's work together. Alex, do you want to say any parting words to people? Because this is your first time, you're finding your voice, but we'll have you back for a check-in soon. Any other final parting words?
I'm just really grateful for this opportunity. Really looking forward to being able to just sit down and share my experiences like Fernando here has. So that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to, is being able to not only make my own story, but also make a story for the community.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Fernando. Que todos se cuidan, y gracias por mirar este capítulo de Latinos Unidos, Latinx United, the Spanglish podcast. Have a good one, everyone.